Ma'am, I'm going to need you to open that bag and show proof of ownership, or I'll have to confiscate it before we land.
Every passenger within 3 rows stopped mid-conversation and turned to watch. Lorraine didn't open the bag or raise her voice. She just lowered a book she'd been reading and looked at the flight attendant the way a woman looks at someone who's about to make a terrible mistake they don't even see coming. The attendant, a white woman in her late 30s whose name tag read Megan Carlisle, had a hand on the overhead bin, chin lifted, completely certain she was catching a thief red-handed. What she didn't know was that the silver Rimo she was so sure was stolen had a custom luggage tag inside the lining with Lorraine's full name, her attorney's contact information, and a detailed property inventory that Lorraine updated every time she traveled, because this wasn't the first time someone had decided her belongings were too nice to be hazed. Let me take you back 4 to 5 minutes. Lorraine had been reading in Seat 8A, Window, Economy Plus, on a flight from Paris to Atlanta, the last leg of a buying trip for her luxury consignment business. She was 53 years old. She ran a small but successful shop in Buckhead called Second Act, specializing in authenticated luxury goods, handbags, watches, luggage, jewelry. She'd built it over 12 years from a folding table at a flea market into a brick-and-mortar store with a loyal clientele and an online presence that did 6 figures annually. She wasn't rich by magazine standards, but she was comfortable, independent, and very, very good at what she did. The Rimowa suitcase in the overhead bin was a classic cabin model, silver aluminum, unmistakable design. Retail value around $1,400. Lorraine had bought it secondhand from an estate sale in Lyon for $600, authenticated herself, and decided to keep it. It was her work bag, her travel companion, scuffed and scratched from years of use. She loved it, and apparently Megan Carlisle thought it was stolen. The first sign of trouble had come when Lorraine boarded. She'd stowed the Rimo in the overhead bin above her seat, the way she always did. Megan had been working the economy section. She'd passed by, glanced at the bin, glanced at Lorraine, then kept walking. But Lorraine had caught the double take, the quick assessment, eyes moving from the bag to Lorraine, to the bag again. The silent calculation, does she match the luggage? Lorraine had noticed but said nothing. She was used to it, used to shop clerks following her, used to being asked for receipts she wasn't required to show, used to the quiet suspicion that followed her through spaces where her presence was apparently unexpected. She'd opened her book and let it go. 4 to 5 minutes later, Megan was standing over her. There's been a concern about the bag in the overhead bin. What kind of concern? Another passenger reported that a Rimowa suitcase matching that description was stolen from the baggage claim area in Paris before we boarded. Lorraine's eyebrows rose slightly. And you think it's mine? I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just asking you to verify ownership. By doing what exactly? Opening the bag and showing me proof that it belongs to you. Lorraine looked at Megan steadily. No, she said. This is where things shifted. No. Megan repeated, as if the word didn't compute. No, I'm not opening my luggage on a plane to prove it belongs to me. This is a serious matter. If that bag was stolen, if someone's luggage was stolen, that's a matter for airport security and police, not a flight attendant in the middle of a transatlantic flight. I'm trying to resolve this before we land. There's nothing to resolve. That's my bag. I packed it. I boarded with it. My name is on the tag. Can I at least see the tag? Lorraine considered. She could show the external tag. Her name was on it, clear as day. That would end this in seconds. But something stopped her. The principle of it. She looked around the cabin. Dozens of bags and overhead bins. Dozens of passengers with luggage of various brands, values, and conditions. Have you asked anyone else to prove their luggage belongs to them? Megan blinked. No, but... Then why me? Because there's been a specific complaint about a Rimowa. A silver Rimowa, on an international flight from Paris. You know how many silver Rimowa suitcases are probably on this plane right now. Megan's jaw tightened. I'm trying to help you. I didn't ask for help. You came to me with an accusation, and I'm declining to participate. If you refuse to cooperate, I'll have to involve the captain. Then involve the captain. Megan stared at her for a long moment, clearly not expecting this level of calm resistance. "Fine," she said. "Stay in your seat." She walked toward the front of the plane. The man in 8B, a white businessman in his 50s who'd been pretending to sleep, opened one eye. That was something. It was something. "All right," Lorraine said quietly. "For what it's worth, I saw you bored with that bag. You walked on with it." "I know. Want me to tell them that?" "Let's see how this plays out first." Lorraine went back to her book, but she wasn't reading. She was thinking about who had reported the stolen Rimowa, about why Megan had come to her specifically, about the careful, practiced way she'd framed the accusation as concern, and about what was going to happen when the captain got involved. But that wasn't the moment that mattered most. 10 minutes later, Megan returned with a man in a pilot's uniform. Not the captain, the first officer. His name tag read FOO Daniel Park. "Ms. Banks," he said, crouching in the aisle to be at her eye level. "I'm First Officer Park. I understand there's a question about some luggage." "There's no question on my end. That's my suitcase." "I believe you. But we received a report from a passenger claiming a bag matching that description was taken from the gate area in Paris. Standard protocol requires us to document the situation." "Document how?" "Just verify the bag is yours. Check the tag. Maybe confirm when you purchased it. Nothing invasive." Lorraine studied him. His tone was different from Megan's. Respectful, careful. "Who reported the bag stolen?" Park hesitated. "I can't disclose that." "Can you tell me what they said exactly?" "They said they saw a silver Rimowa suitcase being placed in the overhead bin by someone they didn't believe was the owner." "And what made them believe that?" Park's expression shifted slightly. He knew what she was asking, and from the way his eyes moved to Megan and back, he knew the answer wasn't going to sound good. "I don't know the specifics of their reasoning." "I do," Lorraine said quietly. "I don't look like someone who would own a $1,400 suitcase. That's the reasoning." Park didn't deny it. "Here's what I'll do," Lorraine continued. "I'm going to show you the external luggage tag, which has my name on it. I'm not opening the bag, and I want the name and seat number of the person who filed this complaint. I can't give you that information. Then I'd like it included in whatever report you're filing, because when we land, I intend to file my own complaint about being singled out for a luggage check that no other passenger was subjected to." Park nodded slowly. "That's your right. May I see the tag?" Lorraine stood, reached into the overhead bin, and turned the bag slightly so the tag was visible. "Lorraine M. Banks, Atlanta, GA. Clear, legible, unmistakable." Park looked at it, then at Megan. "That's her name on the tag." Megan's expression was tight. "Tags can be switched." "Excuse me," Lorraine said. "I'm just saying, a tag doesn't necessarily prove." "Are you seriously suggesting I stole a suitcase and then put my own name tag on it?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm being thorough." "No," Lorraine said, her voice dropping to the quiet register that made everyone within earshot lean in to listen. "You're not being thorough. You're being discriminatory. And the fact that you can't see the difference is exactly the problem." The businessman in 8B sat up fully now. "She's right. I watched her board with that bag. It's hers." A woman across the aisle, black, maybe 40, spoke up. "I saw it too. She stowed it when she sat down. Same bag." Another passenger. "This is ridiculous. Leave her alone." Megan's face flushed. Park put a hand on her arm. "Megan, I think we're done here." "But the complaint." "The tag matches. Multiple passengers confirmed she boarded with it. We're done." Megan pulled her arm away and walked to the galley without another word. Park turned to Lorraine. "I apologize for the disruption. This should have been handled differently." "Yes, it should have. I'll make sure there's a full report file when we land." "Thank you." After he left, Lorraine sat down and closed her eyes. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from the effort of staying in control when every fiber of her being wanted to scream. The woman across the aisle leaned over. "You handled that beautifully." "I've had practice." You shouldn't need practice. No, I shouldn't. What she didn't realize yet was that someone 3 rows back had been recording the entire interaction. 20 minutes before landing, Lorraine needed to use the restroom. She unbuckled and walked toward the back of the plane. On her way, she passed a woman in row 11, white, mid-60s, with perfectly styled silver hair and a cashmere wrap draped over her shoulders. The woman was watching her, not subtly, openly, with an expression that mixed suspicion with something that looked almost like satisfaction. Lorraine met her eyes. The woman looked away quickly, but not before Lorraine noticed something on the seat beside her, a leather-bound notebook open to a page with handwritten notes. She couldn't read them from the aisle, but she saw the words Rimour and report and what looked like a seat number. Row 11. That was the complainer. Lorraine continued to the restroom, processed what she'd seen, and returned to her seat. She pulled out her phone, still in airplane mode, and opened the Notes app. Row 11. Silver hair, cashmere wrap, notebook with notes referencing Rimour and report. Likely the passenger who filed the complaint. No prior interaction. No verbal exchange before the complaint. She has no basis for claiming theft except my appearance. Lorraine had been documenting incidents like this for years. Not because she was paranoid. Because she'd learned the hard way that if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. If you didn't record it, your word against theirs meant nothing. She thought about her shop second act. Every item that came through her doors was authenticated, photographed, documented, and inventoried. She kept meticulous records because in the luxury resale business, provenance was everything. Your word wasn't enough. You needed proof. That lesson applied to more than handbags. The next decision would change how this ended. The plane landed in Atlanta at 4:47 p.m. As passengers began gathering their belongings, Lorraine noticed Megan speaking quietly with another flight attendant near the galley, an older woman with gray hair and a senior pin. They were looking at her. Lorraine stood, retrieved her Rimour from the overhead bin, and waited. As she moved toward the exit, Megan stepped into her path. I've arranged for airport security to meet you at the gate. Lorraine felt her stomach drop. For what purpose? To verify your luggage. It's standard procedure when there's been a theft report. There hasn't been a theft report. There's been a complaint from a passenger who decided my bag was too expensive for me. I'm following protocol. Your protocol is to have a paying passenger detained at the gate because another passenger doesn't like the look of her luggage. If the bag is yours, this will only take a few minutes. And if I refuse, then security will detain you until the matter is resolved. Lorraine looked at her. 15 years of running a business. 15 years of authenticating luxury goods. 15 years of proving over and over that her expertise was real, her business was legitimate, her success was earned. And now she was being treated like a thief because she had a nice suitcase. Fine, she said quietly. Let's go. She stepped off the plane and into the jetway. 2 airport police officers were waiting. One was a young white man. The other was a black woman in her 40s. The female officer spoke first. Ms. Banks. Yes. I'm Officer Patricia Grant. This is Officer Torres. We've been asked to verify ownership of your luggage. By the flight attendant. Yes. And what evidence has she provided that my luggage isn't mine? Officer Grant looked uncomfortable. She said a passenger reported a matching bag stolen. Did this passenger file an official theft report? We don't have that information yet. So you're detaining me based on an unverified claim from an anonymous passenger relayed by a flight attendant who never checked anyone else's luggage. Grant and Torres exchanged a look. We're not detaining you. We're just asking. You're standing between me and the terminal exit. I'm being prevented from leaving. That's detention. Grant took a breath. You're right. And I apologize. But can we resolve this quickly? If you can show proof of ownership, we'll have you on your way in 2 minutes. Lorraine set the Rimour down, opened it. Inside, everything was neatly packed. Clothes, toiletries, and a clear plastic envelope tucked into the lining pocket. She pulled out the envelope. Inside was a laminated card with her name, photo, attorney's contact information, and the serial number of the suitcase. She also pulled out a receipt, the original purchase receipt from the estate sale in Lyon, dated 3 years ago, with a serial number matching the one on the card, and a certificate of authenticity she prepared herself, the same way she authenticated items for her shop. "This is my suitcase," she said, handing the documents to Officer Grant. "My name, my photo. The serial number matches the one stamped on the interior latch. Here's the purchase receipt. And here's my business card. I own a luxury consignment shop in Buckhead. I authenticate items like this for a living." Grant looked through the documents. Her expression shifted from professional neutrality to something much closer to embarrassment. "This is very thorough. I've been accused of stealing my own belongings before. I come prepared." That sentence sat in the air like a stone dropped into still water. Grant handed the documents back. "You're free to go, Ms. Banks. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I'd like to file a formal complaint. Against the flight attendant. Against the airline. For the flight attendant's conduct, for the failure to follow proper theft reporting procedures, and for the discriminatory basis of this entire interaction. You can file that with airline customer relations. I know where to file it. I've done it before." Lorraine picked up her suitcase. "But I'd also like to file a complaint with airport police about being detained without cause." "That's your right." "Thank you." Lorraine started walking toward the terminal, then stopped. "Officer Grant." "Yes." "The passenger who made the complaint is in row 11. Silver hair, cashmere wrap. You might want to ask her if she actually saw anyone steal anything, or if she just saw a black woman with an expensive bag." Grant nodded slowly. "We'll look into it." This is where things shifted. Lorraine didn't go home. She sat in a quiet corner of the terminal, pulled out her tablet, and began documenting everything. She'd learned this process well. Not from law school or corporate training, from necessity. Every incident, every slight, every time someone had decided her possessions, her space, her existence was too much for a woman who looked like her. She opened a fresh document. Incident report, Flight AF 2847, Paris to Atlanta. Date, March 14th. Time, approximately 3:45 p.m. In-flight, through 5:15 p.m. Gate. She wrote everything down. Megan's initial approach. The demand to open the bag. The refusal. First Officer Park's intervention. Megan's comment about tags being switched. The witnesses who spoke up. The security officers at the gate. She noted names, badge numbers, seat numbers, timestamps. Then she pulled out her phone and scrolled through her photos. She'd taken a picture of Megan's name tag during the initial confrontation, discreetly, while adjusting her book. She'd screenshot her own boarding pass with a seat assignment. She had photos of the Rimowa serial number from when she'd first purchased it. She had the estate sale receipt in her phone's cloud storage. Documentation. Always documentation. Her phone buzzed. A text from her business partner, Diane. "How was Paris? Find anything good?" Lorraine typed back. "Paris was productive. The flight home was educational. I'll tell you tomorrow." Then she opened the airline's website and found the formal complaint portal. She spent 30 minutes drafting a detailed, factual complaint. No emotion, no speculation about motives. Just what happened, when, who was involved, and what she wanted done about it. She attached photos, her authentication documents, and the names of the witnesses. Then she submitted it, and waited. What happened next wasn't loud, but it was decisive. 3 days later, Lorraine received an email from a name she didn't recognize. Subject, "I was on your flight. I have the video. Ms. Banks, my name is David Liu. I was seated in row 11C on your flight from Paris. I witnessed the entire incident with the flight attendant and your luggage. I want you to know that I recorded the interaction from the moment the attendant first approached you through her conversation with the first officer. The video is clear and includes audio. I also want you to know something else. The woman who filed the complaint was in my row. Seat 11A. Her name is Margaret Holden. I heard her talking to Megan before the confrontation. She said, and I'm quoting directly, 'There's no way that woman can afford that bag. Someone should check it.' That's what prompted the theft report. Not an actual theft, just an assumption. I'm willing to provide this video and my testimony to the airline, to airport police, or to any legal proceeding you initiate. I'm sorry I didn't speak up on the plane. I should have, but I'm speaking up now. David Liu. Lorraine read the email 3 times. Then she called Diane. I need a lawyer. What happened? Remember when I said the flight home was educational? She told Diane everything. Diane was quiet for a long moment. Lorraine, this is actionable. I know. Are you going to sue? I don't know yet, but I want to make sure this is handled properly. Not just for me, for everyone who's had their belongings questioned because they don't look like they can afford them. I know someone. Civil rights attorney in Midtown. She's good. Send me her information. But that wasn't the moment that mattered most. The attorney's name was Sandra Williams. She was black, 57, with 30 years of civil rights litigation behind her, and the kind of presence that made courtrooms go quiet when she walked in. She met Lorraine at her office the next day. Lorraine brought everything. The documentation, the email from David Liu, the airline complaint confirmation, the police incident number. Sandra reviewed it all, occasionally raising an eyebrow. You authenticate luxury goods for a living. Yes. And you carry provenance documentation for your personal belongings when you travel. For anything over $500. I learned the hard way. How many times has this happened to you? Lorraine paused. This specific scenario, being accused of stealing my own luggage? 3 times. Being questioned about whether I really own something I'm carrying? Too many to count. And you've documented all of them. Most of them. Sandra leaned back. Lorraine, you may be the most prepared client I've ever had. I don't want to be prepared for this. I want to live in a world where I don't have to be. I know, but since we're not in that world yet, let's talk about options. She outlined 3 paths. Path 1, file a formal complaint with the airline and the Department of Transportation. Request an investigation, training reform, and personal compensation. No lawsuit. Path 2, file the complaint in a civil lawsuit against the airline for discrimination. More public, more confrontational, potentially more impactful. Path 3, file the complaint and pursue mediation. Less adversarial, potentially faster, but less public pressure. What do you want? Sandra asked. Lorraine thought about it. I want Megan Carlisle to understand what she did. I want the airline to change how they handle these situations. And I want the woman who complained, Margaret Holden, to face consequences for filing a false report. The false report is separate. That's criminal, not civil. But we can push airport police to pursue it. And the airline? The airline is where we have the most leverage. They violated their own policies. The flight attendant had no authority to demand you open your bag. The security hold at the gate was based on an unverified claim. And the entire interaction was motivated by racial bias. Can we prove that? With David Liu's video and his testimony about what Margaret Holden actually said? Yes, we can prove it. Lorraine nodded. Then let's do path 2, the lawsuit. It'll be public. I know. It'll be scrutinized. I know that too. People will say you're overreacting, that it was just a misunderstanding, that you should have just opened the bag and moved on. I know, but if I'd opened that bag, it would have confirmed that I owed them proof, that my word wasn't enough, that my name on the tag wasn't enough, that 12 years of running a legitimate business wasn't enough. She looked at Sandra. I'm not opening the bag. I'm opening a case. Sandra smiled. Then let's get to work. 2 weeks after Lorraine filed a complaint, the airline responded. Dear Ms. Banks, thank you for bringing this matter to our attention. We take all complaints seriously and have conducted a preliminary review of the incident on Flight AF 2847. After reviewing crew reports and passenger statements, we believe the flight attendant followed appropriate protocol in responding to a passenger concern about potentially stolen property. However, we acknowledge that the situation could have been handled more sensitively. We are providing additional customer service training to the crew member in question. As a gesture of goodwill, we are offering you 10,000 frequent flyer miles and a $200 travel voucher. We value your patronage and hope to restore your confidence in our airline. Sincerely, Jennifer Walsh, Customer Relations Manager. Lorraine read it and forwarded it to Sandra without comment. Sandra called her within the hour. This is a form letter. They are hoping you'll take the miles and go away. I'm not going away. Good, because this response actually helps us. They are acknowledging the incident occurred while trying to minimize it. That's useful in discovery. What's next? I filed a lawsuit, and I send them David Liu's video with a notice of intent. What will the video do? It'll change their calculation. Right now, they think this is a he said, she said situation. The video proves it was targeted. And Margaret Holden's quote, "There's no way that woman can afford that bag." That's direct evidence of racial bias as the motivating factor. Do it. Sandra filed a lawsuit the next day. Banks v. Transatlantic Airways, racial discrimination in passenger treatment. The airline's legal team received the filing along with a preview of the video evidence. Their response came within 48 hours. They wanted to meet. This is where the tone changed. The meeting took place in a conference room at the airline's Atlanta headquarters. On one side, Lorraine, Sandra, and a paralegal. On the other, the airline's VP of Customer Experience, their head of legal, an HR representative, and two outside attorneys. The VP, a white man in his 50s named Richard Hayes, opened by expressing deep concern about Lorraine's experience. "We want you to know we take this seriously. You offered me 10,000 miles and told me the flight attendant followed protocol," Sandra said. "That doesn't suggest deep concern." That was our initial response, before we had all the facts. "And now that you have the video," Hayes glanced at his legal team. "Now we'd like to discuss a resolution." "What kind of resolution?" "We're prepared to offer Ms. Banks a significant settlement, along with a formal apology and an acknowledgement that the incident was handled improperly." "How significant?" Hayes named a figure. It was generous. But Sandra shook her head. "Money isn't the primary concern. Ms. Banks wants systemic change." "What kind of change?" Lorraine spoke for the first time. "I want to know what you're going to do differently. Not for me, for the next black woman who boards one of your planes with a nice suitcase." Hayes nodded slowly. "We're open to discussing that." "Then here's what I want," Lorraine said, pulling out a document she prepared. She laid it on the table. "First, Megan Carlisle needs to understand what she did, not just sensitivity training. A real, substantive program that examines implicit bias and how it manifests in customer service. We can do that. Second, I want the passenger who filed the false complaint, Margaret Holden, referred to airport police for investigation. That's outside our purview." "It's not. You received a complaint. You acted on it without verifying it, and it resulted in my detention. You have a responsibility to report false claims that lead to discriminatory treatment." Hayes looked at his legal team, who exchanged glances. "We'll consider it." Third, I want a policy change. No flight attendant should be able to demand a passenger prove ownership of their belongings without an actual verified report of theft. An anonymous passenger's assumption isn't a report. That's reasonable. Fourth, I want this incident use in your crew training. Anonymized if necessary, but real, so flight attendants can see what bias looks like when it's dressed up as concern. Also reasonable. And fifth, Lorraine said, I want a formal, written apology, not a form letter. Not "we're sorry for the inconvenience." An acknowledgement that what happened was discriminatory, that it was wrong, and that you're committed to ensuring it doesn't happen again. The room was quiet. Sandra let the silence wake. Hayes finally spoke. "We can agree to all 5 points, and would like to add our own commitment. We'll establish an independent passenger advocacy office to handle complaints like yours directly, without filtering through standard customer service." Lorraine looked at Sandra. Sandra gave a slight nod. "We'll review the details and get back to you," Sandra said. "But in principle, we're open to this framework." They shook hands across the table. As Lorraine and Sandra walked out, Sandra leaned over. "That was impressive. I've been negotiating with estate executors and auction houses for 12 years. This was familiar territory." You should have been a lawyer. I'm better as a businesswoman. Lawyers have to be neutral. I get to be right. The settlement was finalized 3 weeks later. The financial component was confidential, but it was enough to fund an expansion of second act that Lorraine had been planning for years. More importantly, the airline agreed to every structural change Lorraine had requested. Mandatory bias training for all customer-facing staff, with specific scenarios addressing racial profiling in luggage and seating situations. A new policy requiring verified theft reports before any passenger could be asked to prove ownership of their belongings. An independent passenger advocacy office with the authority to investigate discrimination complaints. Lorraine's incident used as a case study in crew training, anonymized, but real. A formal written apology, published on the airline's website and sent to Lorraine personally, and a referral of Margaret Holden to airport police for filing a false report. The apology was published on a Tuesday afternoon. We failed a valued passenger. On a recent flight, a crew member questioned the passenger's ownership of her luggage based not on evidence of theft, but on assumptions. The passenger was then detained at the gate despite having clear documentation of ownership. This should never have happened. We are implementing mandatory training, policy changes, and an independent advocacy office to ensure it doesn't happen again. We apologize, not for an inconvenience, but for failure of dignity and respect. Every passenger deserves to travel without being presumed guilty based on how they look. Lorraine read it at her shop, sitting behind the counter where she authenticated luxury goods every day. She felt, not vindicated exactly, more like heard. For once, truly heard. The settlement and apology generated media attention. Not a firestorm, a steady, thoughtful conversation. Articles appeared in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Travel Plus Leisure, and The Root. Each one told a story differently, but the core was the same. A black woman was accused of stealing her own luggage because someone couldn't believe it was Hayes. Lorraine agreed to one interview. Local news, Atlanta. The reporter asked, "Why didn't you just open the bag?" Lorraine's answer became the most quoted line in every story that followed. Because compliance isn't the same as innocence. If I'd opened that bag, I would have confirmed that I owe them proof. That my word wasn't enough. That my name on the tag wasn't enough. And the next time it happens to someone else, they'll be expected to open the bag too. I refused because the demand itself was a problem. The interview aired on a Wednesday evening. By Thursday, Lorraine's shop had a line out the door. Not because of the controversy, because people wanted to meet the woman who'd said what so many of them felt. Women came in who'd never been to a luxury consignment shop before. Black women, mostly, but not only. They told her their stories. About being followed in department stores. About being asked for extra receipts. About the store clerk who'd said, "Are you sure you can afford that?" About the hotel front desk that assumed she was there for the cleaning job. Lorraine listened to everyone, and she realized that her story wasn't remarkable. It was common. That was a problem. And that was why it mattered. Airport police investigated Margaret Holden's complaint. Their findings were straightforward. There was no stolen limo at Charles de Gaulle Airport that day. No theft report had been filed. No one had reported missing luggage that matched the description Margaret had given. Her complaint was entirely fabricated, based on nothing more than looking at Lorraine and deciding she couldn't own the bag she was carrying. Margaret was charged with filing a false police report, a misdemeanor, and with interfering with airline operations. She pleaded no contest and was sentenced to 40 hours of community service and a fine. She was also banned from the airline. Lorraine wasn't at the hearing. She didn't need to be, but she read the transcript. Margaret's statement to the judge was revealing. "I wasn't trying to be racist. I just thought it looked suspicious. She didn't look like she... I mean, those bags are very expensive, and I've had mine stolen before, and I just thought someone should check." The judge's response was equally telling. "Ms. Holden, you described this passenger as suspicious based on no observable behavior, only her appearance. You made assumptions about her financial status and character based on race. That's the textbook definition of profiling. Your complaint wasted law enforcement resources, delayed a flight, and caused real harm to another person. I hope this experience gives you pause the next time you feel the urge to police someone else's possessions." Sandra forwarded the transcript to Lorraine with a note. Justice isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a judge saying out loud what everyone needs to hear. 4 months after the settlement, the airline invited Lorraine to observe one of her new training sessions. She sat in the back of a conference room in Atlanta while 30 flight attendants went through bias awareness training. The trainer was a black woman named Dr. Keisha Palmer, an expert in implicit bias in customer service. She showed them Lorraine's case, anonymized, as agreed, as scenario. A passenger reports that another passenger's bag looks suspicious. What do you do? One attendant raised her hand. Check the complaint. See if there's an actual theft report. Good. And if there isn't, then there's no basis for approaching the passenger. Exactly. But here's where it gets hard. Dr. Palmer pulled up another slide. What if the complaining passenger is insistent? What if they say they're sure the bag is stolen? Another attendant. We can't act on someone's assumption. We need facts. Right. But in this real case, the flight attendant did act on the assumption. Why? Silence. Because the flight attendant looked at the passenger with the bag and made the same assumption the complainer did. She didn't question the complaint because it matched her own bias. More silence. That's how bias works. It doesn't announce itself. It feels like common sense, like reasonable caution, like just being thorough. But when that thoroughness is only applied to certain passengers who happen to be black or brown, are different from what you expect, it's not caution. It's discrimination. One young flight attendant raised her hand. How do we know the difference? Ask yourself, would I be doing this if the passenger were white? Lorraine watched the room absorb that question. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked thoughtful. A few looked defensive. But they were all listening. After the session, Lorraine spoke with Dr. Palmer. Do you think it makes a difference? One session? No. Consistent, ongoing training with accountability? Yes. Slowly. But yes. How slowly? Years. Maybe a generation. But every conversation changes someone's thinking. And changed thinking changes behavior. I hope you're right. So do I. But hope isn't the strategy. Systems are the strategy. And you helped build one. 6 months after the incident, Lorraine expanded second act. She opened a second location, larger, in a more prominent part of Buckhead, and added a new service, authentication workshops. She taught customers how to identify genuine luxury goods, how to spot fakes, how to document provenance. But she also talked about something else. When you walk into a store carrying something beautiful, she told a workshop of 20 women, you should never have to prove it belongs to you. You shouldn't have to carry receipts in your bag. You shouldn't have to anticipate suspicion. But we do. A woman in the front row said, yes, we do. And until the world catches up, we prepare. We document. We carry our proof with pride, not shame. She held up her rimowa, the same silver suitcase, now even more scuffed from the Paris trip. This bag has been to 14 countries. It's been authenticated by me, documented by me, and defended by me. And the next time someone tells me it can't be mine, I'll be ready. But I also hope for a world where being ready isn't necessary, where existing with nice things isn't probable cause. Until then, we prepare, and we don't apologize for having things that are beautiful. The room applauded. After the workshop, a young black woman approached. Ms. Banks, I'm a flight attendant. New. I just finished training. The training that includes your case. Oh, I just wanted to say thank you. Because of what happened to you, I know exactly what to do if a passenger tries to report someone for looking suspicious. I know to ask for facts, not assumptions. I know to protect the accused, not just appease the accuser. And will you? Every time. Good. Because one day, someone who looks like us is going to need you to. The young woman nodded. I'll be ready. 1 year after the incident, Lorraine flew again. Same airline. She considered switching, but Sandra had pointed out that the best test of a reformed system was to use it. She boarded with a rimowa. Same silver suitcase. Same scuffs. Same tag with her name. She stowed it in the overhead bin and sat down. The flight attendant, young, professional, wearing a pin from the new diversity training program, walked past, glanced up at the bin, glanced at Lorraine, and smiled. "That's a beautiful bag." "Thank you." Rimowa, classic cabin. Picked it up at an estate sale in Lyon. "Nice find. I've been eyeing one for myself. Let me know if you ever get one in your shop." Lorraine blinked. "You know my shop?" "Second act? Of course. My roommate bought a vintage Chanel there last month. You authenticated it yourself." "I probably did." She was thrilled, said you were the real deal. The attendant moved on to help other passengers. Lorraine sat very still. No suspicion, no interrogation, no demand to open the bag. Just a conversation between two women about a beautiful suitcase. She pulled out her book, and for the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel the need to stay on guard. 3 weeks after that flight, Lorraine received a letter, handwritten, no return address. "Ms. Banks, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't deserve for you to. My name is Megan Carlisle. I was the flight attendant who accused you of stealing your luggage. I've been in training for the past year. Real training, not the kind you sit through and forget. The kind that makes you look at yourself in a way that hurts. I keep thinking about the moment I walked up to your seat. I was so sure I was doing the right thing. So sure you didn't belong with that bag. And I never stopped to ask myself why I felt that way. The answer is ugly, and I'm sitting with it. I grew up in a town where everyone looked like me. I didn't think I was biased. I thought I was observant. But observation isn't neutral. It's filtered through everything you've absorbed since childhood. And what I absorbed was the idea that certain things belong to certain people. I'm not saying this to make excuses. There are no excuses. I'm saying it because I want you to know that your refusal to open that bag changed something in me. Not because you were defiant, because you were dignified. You didn't yell. You didn't cry. You just said no. And that no has been echoing in my head for a year. I'm trying to be different. I'm trying to see people instead of assumptions. I'm trying to question myself before I question someone else. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know you mattered. Your dignity mattered. And I'm sorry. Megan. Lorraine read the letter twice, set it down, picked it up again. She didn't write back, not because she was angry, though the anger was still there, a dull ache that would probably never fully fade, but because some apologies needed to exist on their own, needed to be given without the comfort of a response. Megan's growth wasn't Lorraine's responsibility, but she was glad it was happening. She filed the letter in her documentation folder, not as evidence, as proof that change, real, uncomfortable, internal change, was possible, even when it hurt, even when it was slow, even when it came too late for the person it should have protected. They accused her of stealing her own luggage. They demanded she open her bag and prove it was hers. They detained her at the gate of her home airport. They treated her guilt as a default and her innocence as something that required evidence. And Lorraine Banks said no. Not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly, because she knew something they didn't. Compliance isn't innocence. Opening that bag wouldn't have proven she owned it. It would have proven that her word wasn't enough. That her name on the tag wasn't enough. That being a black woman with something beautiful was inherently suspicious. And she refused to participate in that narrative. Instead, she documented. She prepared. She carried proof not because she should have to, but because she lived in a world that demanded it. And when the moment came, she used that preparation, not as a weapon, but as a mirror, held it up to the airline and said, "Look at what you did. Now fix it." And they did. Not perfectly, not overnight, but measurably. Training programs changed. Policies changed. An advocacy office was created. A flight attendant examined her biases and started doing the work. All because one woman refused to open a suitcase. That's not defiance. That's dignity. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that doesn't need applause. The kind that simply says, "I am who I say I am. My belongings are mine. And I will not perform innocence for your comfort." Would you have opened the bag? Most people would have, and no one would have blamed them. But Lorraine Banks chose differently. She chose to hold the line. And in doing so, she moved it, not just for herself, for every black woman who's ever been followed in a store, for every person of color who's been asked to justify their possessions, for every traveler who's been profiled for looking wrong in the right space. She didn't raise her voice. She raised a standard. And the echo of that quiet no is still changing things. One policy at a time. One training session at a time. One flight attendant at a time. Until the day, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not soon, but someday when a black woman with a beautiful suitcase can board a plane and just be a passenger. Nothing more, nothing less. Just a woman going where she's going, with everything she owns. Unbothered, unquestioned, free. You should never have to prove you deserve what's already yours. But until the world learns that, come prepared. Document everything. Know your rights. And when they ask you to open the bag, you get to decide whether to prove yourself or protect your dignity. Lorraine chose dignity, and that choice echoed louder than any receipt ever could. Not because she was powerful, because she was right, and she refused to let anyone make her forget it.